Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's event, which is on the topic of family-centered practice. Thanks very much for being with us this afternoon. It's always wonderful to bring colleagues together, so thank you. A couple of housekeeping points. If you could all mute your microphones, and we are going to be recording this main session, so the main presentations, and we hope to share a video with you as well, and the plenary wrap-up session at the end where we bring everybody together. Zoom doesn't allow us to record the breakout sessions, so those will be held in private, but the rest of it will be recorded. And we will be sharing the recording with you afterwards, as well as the resources from today. So I've shared the aims for today's meeting before the day, and I hope you find it useful. I hope you find the opportunity to come together useful. And in particular, those last 2 points, we see these events as a fantastic opportunity to learn from each other, to share with each other, and to hear from other colleagues. Our goal, though, is also to leave you with and give you resources and materials, ideas, maybe even discussion points and models for discussion that you can then take back to your schools. And I'm hoping that's very much going to be the case today. So we're going to share the recording from today, but we are also going to be recording a podcast discussion. Many of you will know the podcast that we set up last year. We've called it the LearningShared podcast. And as the description there says, the idea of LearningShared is really to shine a light on creative, inspiring ideas and effective practice. We found that these podcasts give us a wonderful chance to explore ideas and practice with a wide range of colleagues and practitioners. It's also a fantastic platform to share some of the great stuff that you're all doing within your schools and settings. Barry and I had the great pleasure of recording an episode on Wednesday afternoon with Alex Revens. Some of you who came to the engagement meeting just before Easter would have seen Alex give a fantastic presentation based around how he's been using, well, he and his team have been using the engagement model to support learners within their additionally resource provision in West London. We are going to record an episode connected with this event too, and what we'll do is make the episode available along with the resources and videos and presentations from today. So as I said, hopefully you'll have a fantastic package of resources to take back to your school to support CPLD within your own settings. I've just put up on the screen there, we recorded 3 fantastic episodes just before Easter to support the sessions that we were doing around engagement. We're very lucky to within the community to have the patronage and support of Barry, Professor Barry Carpenter, and Barry's been really instrumental in helping us really harness some of this wonderful practice that's going on within the community and across the community, and helping us scaffold how we might create topics for discussion through these podcasts. And I really do recommend these first 3. There's a combination of some lectures in there, there are panel discussions, as well as colleagues sharing what they're doing around the theme of engagement. So they're available from the following sites. I won't dwell on this slide because I'm going to be sharing this afterwards, but it's the usual podcast channels is where you can find the LearningShared podcast. And actually, if in doubt, as you can see at the bottom of this slide, if you go to the Evidence for Learning website or to learningshared.org, you can access all of the episodes from there. So the other component today is really about the networking. It's it's really exciting. We've got now more than 500 specialist schools and settings that are using evidence for learning around the country, and we're delighted that we're joined by colleagues from New Zealand. I think Jane Fincham from Australia was hoping to join us today, and we have colleagues in the Middle East, in Dubai as well. So we have this phenomenal community, and as Barry Carpenter and I were reflecting the other night, it's not even so much the size of the community, it's really the quality of practice, the quality of leadership within the community is really phenomenal. And again, part of our mission, if you like, within Evidence for Learning is how can we help that community nurture? How can we help you to forge links with colleagues and settings that can help you and your families in your endeavors? And the Padlet that we've set up is part of that process. So let me just share the screen, because I just want to make sure everybody can see the Padlet and knows where it is. Can everybody see my browser now?
We can see the Padlet perfectly.
Fabulous. So I've sent the details on how to get here, so I won't repeat those. You can see the URL at the top of the screen. There is an app for Padlet as well, which runs on Android and iOS, which you can use. What's great about this, and hopefully you can see this in action now, is it gives us a shared space where we can create posts. And what we've done is, in this middle section, we've created a few columns where we've invited you to share something about your school. And what I would invite everybody to do, both during this session and afterwards, is come back to this Padlet. It's there to really help you, so that you may find colleagues, you may find partners, not just obviously in the context of evidence for learning, just generally. We're not changing this, we're not taking it down. So it really is there as a resource for you to support your networks. What I would like to draw your attention to is the first two columns. So what we've done with these is we've created some posts where we're inviting you to let us know if you're interested in participating in any interest groups or working groups. So making a post on there is pretty straightforward. I'll just quickly show you. If you just click on the plus at the top of the relevant column, there's a title. So you could write in here the title, which could be, for example, the name of your school. And then once you put in the name of your school, where it says write something, just click there and just write something. And then when you've finished writing what you want to write, if you just click your mouse away, it saves it. And then what you can do is come back to the three dots and you can change the color. And if you're interested in being part of any of these working groups or interest groups, then just please add a comment with your details. We're starting to put together a number of working groups. I'm just going to shimmy back to my slide. So we've got a number of working groups that are already planned for this term. Barry and I are working on putting together a teaching network for colleagues who are specifically working with learners with profound and multiple learning difficulties. If you're interested in being part of that group, then please get in touch with me directly, because that's one we're putting together imminently, but also feel free to add your name to the Padlet. We're working on a series of podcasts and events that are going to be specifically looking at wellbeing, SEMH and the new RHSE curriculum. That's going to really take place in the second half of this term. We're looking to bring together a number of expert speakers and authors from the field to assist us with this, and we'll be inviting a number of schools to be involved as well. So that's something that if you're interested in being part of, then please get in touch. I've also put ASDAN on here. I've been working with Simon Lawrence and Mel Connolly from ASDAN. They've been part of a number of our meetings so far. A lot of schools use ASDAN with EfL, and so ASDAN have put together an information sheet on using evidence for learning to support your work with ASDAN. And what's been suggested is that we set up a working group for ASDAN. So any schools that use ASDAN, please get in touch with myself or Blake, and we'll be happy to involve you in that session too. So on to today and family-centered practice. I'd like to start just by introducing our co-hosts. Professor Barry Carpenter is a key supporter of evidence for learning. I think it's somebody I've learned an awful lot from over the last 3 to 4 years that we've been working together. I'm delighted that he's playing a role in today's session. Vijita Patel is the principal at Swiss Cottage School Development and Research Centre. And I'd also like to give a special thanks, just while we're mentioning Swiss Cottage, to Dean Howard, because we're going to be watching a video today, and Dean's done some wonderful work to put this video together that you're all going to be able to take back to your schools. So thank you very much for that, Dean. Jo Williams is the deputy at D Bank School. Jo's going to be giving us a wonderful presentation, and she's going to be joined by Ashley Fearon from the school. And then Leanne Buchanan is the deputy at Foxwood School. I would like to give a really special mention. We've got some really special guests with us today. Maria Schultz and Sadia Mahmoud Marshall are parents of children at Swiss Cottage, and I'd like to give a quick introduction and mention to their children, Alex and Amaya. These families have been extremely generous. They've worked with Vegeta, Dean, and the team at Swiss Cottage to put together a short video and presentation for us on how they've worked together as a team to put in place models that support their children. And I'd like to just say thank you to Maria and Sadia now before we get started for your efforts in putting that video together, but also for joining us today. Thank you very much. So here's the agenda. I'm not going to read it out to you. I'm going to get straight on and invite Barry to give us his keynote introduction. So Barry, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon everyone, and thank you Alan for those words of introduction, and as ever we are grateful to Alan because the platform he offers us for sharing in this way I think has totally revolutionised things. I know we've all been locked down and couldn't travel, but actually I think going forward we'll certainly be looking at a blended model of delivery, because so many of you at this time on a Friday afternoon can spare an hour in school, but you would find it very difficult to be travelling out, and it would probably take a whole day for some of you. So the fact we can network with such ease, colleagues, as Alan's mentioned, Jane Thistlethwaite in New Zealand is with us, for example, is a great thing to do. So we're looking this afternoon at family-centred practice, and again, I've had the privilege of looking at the contributions that are coming into you from the parents at Swiss Cottage, and they will just, you almost don't need my words because their words say it all. But the words I'm offering this afternoon, colleagues, are to frame your practice. Your practice is dynamic, your practice is constantly evolving, but because you're so busy in school, what I want to do is try and give you some structures and frameworks that guide, support and enable that organic growth that you're so very good at. So my theme is about talking to families, listening to families, working with families, and again you're going to get some superb exemplars of that. But from my own point of view this afternoon, I've juxtapositioned myself as a father, because as you know, I have 3 children, but my middle daughter Kate has Down syndrome, and I've got an example of some of Kate's work at one point in the presentation. And obviously my own work as a teacher. What I'm offering you this afternoon is nothing that I haven't tried in the 3 schools that I've been head teacher of over the years. And in fact, it's great to see Di Finney from Staffordshire on the call this afternoon, who I appointed as a probationary teacher and is just also this term ending her career as a head teacher. How old am I? And finally, you know that a lot of my writing has been around families, and one of my major research themes, particularly in the 90s, was actually on fathers. And I have a whole raft of articles on dads, who are often the invisible parent, or the, we don't recognise fathers and their contribution. Our systems are often not father-friendly to the work patterns of fathers, and maybe sometimes mothers even. And what do we do about that? I must say at the outset, in the spirit of family-centred practice, you're going to hear some background noise because I'm actually, Fridays I don't normally work, because it's my childcare day for my grandson Rory, who's in the background, very much into Paw Patrol. So those of you who know Paw Patrol, if you hear Marshall or Sky screamed out, yes, you're hearing the right words there. His language is just pouring out at 20 months. And I'm doing this on my own today because my wife is in hospital, so it's a real family-focused day for me. So I want us to think about shifting the focus from parents to families. We still hear, and the DfE literature still talks about partnership with parents. And at this point in time, when you're receiving children back from a 3rd lockdown, your liaison, your collaboration with parents is probably going to be very close, because they have been the main deliverers of education in recent months to their child. And they've invested in the learning of the child, and they want that dialogue to continue. And as our 2 parent presenters this afternoon will show you, what better vehicle for that united dialogue than Evidence for Learning and the Parent Portal, and the power that it gives to both teacher and to parent, with a clear focus on the child and the learning attainment and achievement. And you've heard me say before, the great thing about Evidence for Learning app is that it wraps around the child at their point of learning need. It captures their attainment and it celebrates their achievement. But the reality is, it's not just parents, it's families. Think of normal times, for example, where you know that grandparents are delivering children to your school. And you speak to grandparents. But what about the room in your school? Is it labelled parents' room or is it labelled family centre? And it's minor things like that that are really, really significant. It's about your language. I once came across a grandparent in a school who was standing in a corridor waiting for her grandchild's annual review that she was going to attend on behalf of the family. And I said, why don't you go into the parents' room here? You know, they're very friendly in this school. You'd be happy to. No, I'm a grandparent. I said, yes, but, you know, you're here representing the family. No, I couldn't possibly. It says parents, and I'm not a parent. I'm a grandparent. And for her, in her generation, she was not crossing that threshold for fear that head teacher flew into the room and said, what are you doing in here? You're a grandparent, and this is a parents' room. Now, I knew that school well, and I knew that wouldn't happen, but that was the reality for that grandparent. And so I would just ask you to think about your language. Could you just call it partnership with families? Just think of this almost silly example. But what if a grandparent came to you and said, can I talk to you about Johnny's reading because I've been listening to him read after school each day? What would you say? I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. I only talk to the parent about Johnny's reading. I cannot imagine one of you saying that. But by calling it constantly partnership with parents, you exclude instead of include. And we are about inclusive practice, are we not? Even in our specialist settings, we're about including everyone and valuing the contribution of those grandparents or that older sibling who knocks on your classroom door and says, you teach my older brother, but can I just ask you, what does he really like at the moment? Because his birthday's coming up and I want to get him a birthday present that would really mean something to him. What would you say? I'm sorry, I can't talk to you. I only have a dialogue with parents. Not one of you would do that. You'd say, oh yeah, I've got some ideas. Sit down, let's have a chat. So why are we calling it partnership with families when your practice, partnership with parents, when your practice is in reality partnership with families? Families are at the heart of society and the basis of our future as a country. It's from one of the government documents. So in this 21st century, families are not necessarily related by blood or kinship, but a constellation of people offering mutual support. We still are talking about 20th century models of family, that it's only people who are blood related. How many of you, when describing the people that you make up your family, talk about your best friend and use the phrase, oh, they're just like family? They're just like family. Then why aren't we valuing however each of your families define themselves? Now you think that's going to be a big and complex task, Barry, to find all of that information. I'm going to offer you a simple solution in a moment. But a constellation of people, isn't that a beautiful phrase? A constellation of people. I can't believe I wrote that back in 1988, but that's where it came from. So, family school partnerships. Families are the first and continuing educators of their child. You do a superb job. Let me tell you, with my daughter Katie, she has the life she has now because of the brilliant teachers that educated her, who believed in her, who believed in teaching her sign to stimulate her speech, who believed in using symbols as a bridge to her accessing reading, who believed in that she read and signed the responses before ever she said them. And when people said, but that's not reading, stood up for her and said, oh, but it is. And that she now has the most wonderful reading skills, and every text that she sends never has a spelling mistake in it, due to the brilliance of those teachers. That is the lasting legacy, you do, colleagues, that you have. And remember, you're charged by the Education Reform Act 1988, preparation for adulthood. That's the legal principle. Whatever age group you're teaching, you're putting another building block in place, preparing for adulthood. So what I'm asking you with our families, what about you're building their capacity? How are you involving those grandparents? How are you involving those siblings? It's called capacity building. And what I've done is I've sent Alan some articles. Now, this won't be for all of you, I know. But some of you are real thinkers or are charged with leadership and you like to know more. So I wanted you to have, even if only one of you uses it, I want you to have the latest thinking in terms of capacity building, family empowerment. Marilyn Esch-Beschwind talks about family empowerment and the validity, the ecological validity. So that everything we do with the child, what is the relevance to the daily lived experience of that child? What is the relevance to its life in the family? And capacity building, Carl Dunst talks about, quite simply I'd define it as making families stronger. The adult years when you're parenting a child with a disability are tough, and I'm sure the two parents speaking to you this afternoon will underscore that powerfully. Let me tell you, the adult years are hell. The lack of services is a national disgrace. And you need to make your families as strong as you possibly can for when that child leaves your school, so they can continue your excellent work, so that your skills and talents that you've invested in their sons and daughters don't just fall apart, but carry on forward, because you've shared the script. That's what annual review should be about. Sharing the script. And EfL, with its video capture, powerfully shows families what their son or daughter has been doing, and they carry it on. And they'll have video to take to future adult employers or meetings with social services and say, look, when he was in school last year, he could do this. Why are you not offering him challenging opportunities? Let me give you an example. If you're thinking about siblings, when I was last the principal of a school, it was quite a big school with 450 staff, and we had every term a Saturday for siblings. And yes, there are a couple of teachers that ran that, and you think, 5 days a week, Barry, and working a Saturday? No, it's quite simple. They had a day in hand and they took it off whenever they wanted to. It didn't need a contract. It's about trust between colleagues. And what we did then with those siblings was a whole range of sib shops based on the work of Don Meyer, M-E-Y-E-R, Don Meyer in the States, and his sib shops movement. And I would commend you to looking at that work. One of the beautiful things that happened was, after a few years of running those sib shops, is I had two siblings who were in their lower sixth at the time come to me and say, Barry, we've grown up with these sib shops and they've meant a lot to us. What can we give back to the school? And I gave it some thought, and they came on to the equivalent of our governing body, or governing bodies in your schools, as associate governors. And for the 12 months they were there before they went to university, they enriched that governing body, because when we were talking about activities for their children, for the children's school, two 17-year-olds understood much better what activities the children in the school might enjoy than, frankly, 30, 40 and 50-year-olds. So why wouldn't you use those skills? And both of those young people went on to university, and both subsequently have gone into medicine or psychology, working with children with disabilities. So in fact, you're growing a future workforce. And family empowerment, making those families strong. And finally, the words there, confident champion. I've just published this article, which some of you may have seen already, and it's with two Irish colleagues. And you see, when you have a child with a disability, you get shrouded in lots of grief and mourning stuff. Isn't it sad you've had a child like this? Won't it impoverish your life? And it's about turning that language on its head and creating confident champions. And again, I applaud EfL as an app, because I think the visual evidence it can produce is so portable, it enables parents to go forward and saying, my child can do this, and here's the proof. And you need to believe in my child as that school believed in them. So there's some future reading for those of you that want to take this forward. What I'm talking about, therefore, is a self-defining family. And don't think for 1 minute I'm ruling parents out. I'm not. Parents are at the heart of a family with their child. But look, you can have blood relatives there, grandparents, siblings, other relatives, blood relatives. But neighbours can be a massive help when you have a child with disability. Just for the few minutes of looking at, or encouraging them to play, in the community, and your work colleagues who can offer support as well, and those friends that you've got who are just like family. Let's not close off those people. The other thing I used to do in the last school I was principal of is have a day a year called the Supporters Club. And anybody that was a supporter of a family, of a child in our school, was invited into the school, and they could go and bounce in the soft playroom. They could try out the sensory room, because traditional schools don't have that. And similarly, siblings who have looked with envy at the glorious facilities you've got could have their day in the sensory room, the soft playroom, the sports sanctuary outside, your new Keep Fit trail. Because you do have some wonderful facilities. Why wouldn't you share them? Think of having a supporters club in your school. And the model I said to you, that's a very easy one, is I used to use this, and Diafini may remember from the days when I used to oversee the nursery in the school. It was an integrated nursery for the town, and we used to take a child in, and when we were talking to the parents and whoever, grandparents often came, we'd say, right, this is the child's name in the middle. Who supports this child? And the 3 concentric circles are about the level of support. The level of support. Yes, you can probably hear the background noise at the moment of when the saints go marching in. And so those people that gave the most support to the child, the regular support, were in the circle closest to the child, and then other names rippled out. Now, I said that used to be done at nurseries and mission, or, you give parents some long and complex forms to fill in sometimes. Why wouldn't you give them 3 concentric circles, put the child's name in the middle and say, could you take this home and just pop in who are the key people? So when your child starts to talk about Auntie Bev, we know who they mean. Or that they talk about Mary, who's your next door neighbour. We know. We can value the child's contribution and talk to them about the people who are important in their lives. Through 3 concentric circles, where's the problem? There isn't a problem. I want to just use this one more time, because that name in the middle is Katie. It's my daughter Kate. And we used this with her when she started to live independently, by getting her to think about who were the people who were key supporters in her life. And by then she was going to the local church, so Father Paul appeared. Mary was a woman from church who she worked with and saw during the week for coffee. Sarah and Steve were another couple who ferried her to and from various activities, but lived in her village. And so it's something then that some of your students can do, that you can help them conceptualize. I think you could use it at any stage. But it goes beyond that, because what then is the support that any of those services, people, give? So Kate at the moment gets some support at some point each day from some support workers. She's done voluntary work in Red Cross shop. She goes to hairdressers, she goes to doctors, she goes every 6 months to audiologists, she uses a village shop. So in fact, it's become an analysis. It's what's called an ecology. It is how we live. It's actually called, in research terms, ecological validity. But you may not want to go for that far today. It's just 3 circles on a page, just expressing the support in somebody's life who has a disability. It isn't difficult, is it? So what do schools want from their families? What do families want from their schools? And believe you me, there's often a gap. Annually, I used to do, in my last school particularly, used to do a family survey to find out how and which services we offered families truly valued. Because whose child is it anyway? We're paid to do a job. This is their child for life. And we want them to take away from that school experience things that empower them to be the lifelong educator. Wonderful as you are in your job, you are the transitory educator. It is the parents who will carry on many of the seeds that you have planted that may not have truly germinated by the time the child leaves your school. I would ask you to think about the tangibility factors. Some of the things you do may sound wonderful and grand, but how would families know they're there? How would they touch these services? How would they feel the impact on their lives? You know, lots of heads talk about having an open door policy. I'm not sure. Open doors are terribly drafty. If I pushed open the door in your school, how would I know that I'm a valued family member, particularly now in my role as a grandparent? How would I be able to engage in those services? Or is it only ever parents who can go to those meetings? Can I come to the annual review meeting? In fact, in Katie's latter days in school, I made sure that my other two children went to those annual review meetings, because who's going to advocate for her when I'm gone, quite frankly? And so it's about giving training to those siblings to carry out their future role. How would any family member feel the impact in their life? And you need to evaluate, just as Ofsted comes to evaluate you evaluate what you do for your families too. If you want to follow up this theme of talking to families, listening to families, there is a wonderful module on the Complex Needs website, completely free. Don't try and download it, work from it online. But it's well worth having a look at. Many of the messages there are extremely relevant still. So my final slide. Families are big, small, extended, nuclear, multi-generational, with one parent, two parents, same-sex parents and grandparents. We live under one roof or many. A family can be as temporary as a few weeks, as permanent as forever. We can become part of a family by birth, adoption, marriage, or from a desire for mutual support. A family is a culture unto itself, with different values and unique ways of realizing its dreams. Together, our families become the source of our rich cultural heritage and spiritual diversity. Our families create neighborhoods, communities, states, and nations. Thank you, colleagues. I wish you well with your work.
Thank you very much, Barry. And thank you also to Rory for letting Grandpa come and talk to us for 10 minutes. Barry's going to be understandably dropping off shortly to take care of more important things. But thank you very much for starting us off in the right direction, Barry, and giving us some really thought-provoking questions to ponder as we move forward. The next speakers is a combo team. We've got Vijita Patel, who, as I said, is the principal at Swiss Cottage School Development and Research Centre, is going to be giving us a bit of an intro, but then introducing us to Maria Schultz and Sadia Mahmood Marshall. We've pre-recorded Maria and Sadia's segment as a video. So after Vijita's done her piece, she's going to give me a prompt and we're going to press play, and I'm going to cross my fingers that the technology works for us. Sadia and Maria have agreed to stay on a little bit afterwards as well. So if anyone has any questions that they'd like to either put to Vijita or Maria or Sadia directly after this next presentation, then if you could use the chat box in Zoom just to post your questions, and Blake's going to keep an eye on them, and hopefully we can have some Q&A at the end. But without further ado, Vijita, I'll hand over to you. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everybody. And it's fantastic to see so many colleagues joining on a Friday afternoon. We know how busy the first 2 weeks back have been from the holidays. So wonderful that everybody here is connected around this focus on family partnership. So I'm Vijita Patel. Maria and Sadia are on the session as well. And as Alan said, all three of us are here until the end of this segment. And please, a very warm welcome from both of them. They really want to take any questions you may have. We are so lucky to have parents join and support your sort of queries. Every question is a great question is a motto that we've got at Swiss. So please be brave, type any question you have while we've got them with us. I'm just going to share my screen now, and actually what I pretty much am is an introduction just to give you context. When Alan and I spoke, we both agreed very quickly the best keynote is a set of parents. So actually the big keynote message to you is going to come from both Sadia and Maria in a moment. So a very warm welcome. Our school website is on here. One of the parents is also on Twitter, and we've noticed that social media is a great way to keep that conversation going. So our school Twitter is there alongside Maria's as well. well. So please do consider different ways of connecting with all colleagues. It's incredibly powerful to always hear Barry's message, because he challenges us with a really strong provocation to think about that partnership model. But I think Barry is really making us think about the authenticity of it, which is incredibly important. Ever so quickly, Swiss Cottage, we're a special needs school in London, in the London Borough of Camden. We have 260 phenomenal, amazing children and young people in our school, aged 2 to 19. But most importantly, we work very carefully with mainstream primary and secondary schools so that our pupils feel that connection. As a school, we have a very explicit curriculum vision. It informs 5 different curriculum pathways that we have across our school, because the easiest way to describe Swiss, we believe one size does not fit all. We believe this for mainstream as well. And I feel like that's a connection we have with everybody on this session at the moment. I should say also, one of our leaders, Katie Henry, is also on this entire session. She leads the curriculum for the semi-formal pathway. So we are here to support any questions that there might be about EfL throughout. Fundamentally for us, when we think about our curriculum, we know that the school culture and the ethos really needs to be the driving force for how we're going to enable that really deep learning process. So we began as a values-led organization. So whether it's our own staff teams, our community of families and pupils, or partners that we work with, everybody knows that we have 3 very explicit values that we use to embed a positive culture. And this culture has a can-do spirit built into it, so that actually anything that's a challenge becomes an opportunity. It's something that we want to problem solve together. And that is fundamental for us. So as a school, we have a learning culture. As a staff team, we feel we need to learn to be able to enable our pupils to be able to have the best opportunity with learning design. So we very much view this as a learning culture for our staff, our families, and the networks of professionals. If we're all wrapped around reflective inquiry and are research-led, we feel that actually the partnerships are having a very deep impact. And in the simplest terms, we want our skill culture and ethos to be able to really underpin all of our efforts towards what we can always have as the provision for our pupils, but the way that we are always committed to being more creative and sort of enhance that experience for them. For us, and keeping to this theme, and as Barry has really helped us to think about, that mission that we embark on as a school is not something we ever feel alone on. We know that we're doing it with our parents, carers, and families, that we're all advocating for the same thing. We want our pupils to be accepted and celebrated. We don't want them tolerated in the local community. And the way to do this is to really ensure that there's an awareness and an acknowledgement of what they bring, and that they're valuable contributors to society. So we do embark on that mission, but we do it together as a community. We don't feel it's something the school does individually. So you're going to hear from 2 incredible parents in a moment, and what will be reflected. It's great, as Barry said, it's great for me to say we have a commitment to family partnership, but is that real? Well, the only way to find out is to hear from our parents. We have a commitment to having an authentic voice for our families. We think that it's really important that they're able to really come with those burning questions, those curiosities, those celebrations, all of those moments. And as a school, we need to make sure that what we know as a school is going to the parents, and that there's a 2-way relationship, because at the end of the day, any information that we have, our reflections, our analysis, everything that we have on what we've observed with the pupils as well, it is really a tool for the families as they work very hard to empower their child, and because our families are very much advocating for their children as well. We always see our parents, carers, and families as the experts with the children. We're learning from them. And because this sits within our school culture, we feel that family partnership piece has followed. We have a number of formal and informal processes to enable that. And because our curriculum is a personalized model, we feel it's very important that actually parent-carer partnership is also equally one that is personalized to where the family is at, to what they want, and also in a way that is going to enable the teacher as the leader of their classroom to really work closely and in an equal relationship with our families. So I enjoyed the way that Barry described it as the tangibility factor. And that is really important. We don't have a top-down model. It's not about families just having a connection to the senior team. Actually, what we've done with our school culture, which is one that we embrace as a non-negotiable, is place our teachers at the heart of that relationship. They build that relationship with the family, and they are understanding the priorities and the strengths for the child during this moment of education. Our pupils progress over time. In the same way, our relationships are nurtured and develop. And most crucially, those key sort of values alongside trust, integrity, and that development of open and honest communication is what has allowed us to always be sort of anchored in a very authentic relationship. So when we think about EfL as a school progress, we're thinking about the holistic picture, as I'm sure all of you are. And I just want to emphasize that actually, when we're thinking about what this progress picture looks like, there could be a number of graphs, but actually we know the fundamental piece is on the left. It is everything that's coming to that moment that is the outcome of all of that very, very creative planning, the preparation, the efforts to contextualize the learning so that we can feel the deep learning having an impact. And for us, we know that this is not possible if we're not in partnership with our families. They hold the most important piece of this puzzle because they are getting a sense of the child and young person through all of those other sort of experiences in the home environment, in the community. But the family are thinking about the bigger picture for us. They're telling us where they want their child to be beyond their experience in education. If we can hold on to that wider vision at the earliest ages, actually we're working together to really think about how we're going to unlock that potential and really maximize what learning will be to be able to make sure their talents are nurtured and developed alongside those core aspects on child development and pupil development. So how do we do this? You know, it all sounds great. I always love how Barry tells us, sounds great, tell us how you do it. So what's important to us is the journey with EfL. 4 to 5 years ago, now the school has always had an approach with using learning journals. It's had various iterations, different types of software, even involved PowerPoint sort of presentations for families. And then we discovered EfL. We were looking for something that was going to meet 4 key criteria. We wanted something that could link back to our core principles. We didn't just want to be accountability led. How would it match our provision? How would it match our curriculum? Because if we personalize that, we need something that's going to personalize this sort of collation of evidence, that formative assessment piece. We wanted something that was going to support our learning culture. If we're inquiry-led, it means we needed a tool for that reflective practice. We are completely committed to that family partnership. So we wanted something that over time was going to be owned by the families, was going to be something that they had a voice in, but would fundamentally be a tool that would then mean teachers and families could co-design together and really authentically do that. And then finally, of course, everything with our systems around data analysis and what all of us on the call are thinking about in case Ofsted come in, if there were to be any sort of monitoring visit or quality assurance processes with governors, actually having all of the first 3 areas lead to those processes as well. And for us, evidence for learning was the singular tool that was going to answer all of these priorities we had. What we found that was really important is that actually when we thought about the school improvement cycle, and many of you will know the EEF document that takes us through the process of change management, how we have to explore and prepare before we go into the implementation process, and review how we're going to sustain that school improvement priority. For us, what we did was build the viewpoints of parents into this cycle as we were reviewing what EfL was, what it could be, and how we were going to ensure that was done in stages. Because we knew that we needed to build confidence within our school teams, equally with our families, but also with our pupils. Because if this is something so dynamic, any child enjoys an iPad and an iPod. So they're understanding that this was something that was going to capture learning and not be just a tool for engaging in that learning. Having the viewpoints of the families has allowed us to really embed the role of EfL at our school. And fundamentally for us, it's about the fact that the communication between the families and also the teachers, and then groups of teachers, has allowed us to also personalize how EfL is rolled out across our school. Again, not one size fits all, but that's been personalized through what our families have found valuable and what they have told us they want. We want to be able to use it in this way. We're very lucky because also we have the privilege that Alan is leading a tech innovation that is receptive to developing, and we've felt that journey as well. So when you hear both of the parents, because they are your keynote sort of talk, I'm just here to set the scene. And what it was is that we needed to make decisions as a school leadership team with our governing board on how we were going to ensure at the center of any system was not going to be the accountability measure. It wasn't going to be around the Ofsted handbook. It was going to be something that was allowing everybody wrapped around the pupil to really ensure an integrated provision. That tool for us was evidence for learning. And what we find now is if there are any questions that we're grappling with, if there's something we want to enhance in our school, if we want to evolve an area of our curriculum, if we're thinking about classroom design, if we're thinking about resources that go to the home environment, we're able to use what's in EfL, but what will come through EfL, through that partnership with families, in order to make those important decisions together. And that is an important message that we want to share with you. Fundamentally for us, we've tried to break this idea of the school being responsible for education and knowing everything about the child. Actually, our culture has worked quite hard to make sure that the relationship between parent, carers, and families and the school is one of mutual respect, one that has an equal voice, so that through that open conversation, there's never anything of risk, because it can only benefit the outcomes for our pupils who we're working with such privilege with. So a great example of this, we're always navigating challenges. And if we think about the pandemic, what's fair to say is as a school, we never felt alone on how to launch a very quick virtual school, then how to enhance that, and also how to wrap this entire approach with EHCPs and the progress for our pupils as we responded to a number of policy changes from the Department for Education. For us, when we look back at this sort of chapter with the pandemic, the resilience of our team and this sense of well-being has been through this partnership with our families, really open conversations, real understanding on the needs, which can be a wide spectrum for our families and also for our staff. And what was fantastic was we were able to feel not just our responsibility for our staff's well-being, but our families wanting that as well, because that partnership meant that there was a joint relationship between the class team and the families on really being able to think about the bigger picture on how we would move through this together. So that's just to set the scene on the context of our school, so that you can consider that as you interact with the keynote speech. It is with Maria Schultz and Sadia Mahmood Marshall. Both are parents who are co-opted governors with our governing board at our school, and two parents who have had a period of time with our school, so they're able to share what evidence for learning has been over the 4 years and how we're starting to use it more creatively, because that's what we would like to share now. And then all three of us are still on for questions at the end of this segment. Right, Alan.
Thank you, Vijita. So let me try. Share sound, optimize video clip. Can everybody see my browser?
Yeah, we can.
Hello, everybody. My name is Maria.
And the sound's coming through.
I've been asked to come here today to talk to you about some of the benefits of using evidence for learning. But before I get into that, I just want to give you a little bit of background information. I've got a 15-year-old son who is in mainstream school, and I've got a 13-year-old son at Swiss Cottage School. He's got a rare syndrome and severe learning difficulties. Alex has been at Swiss Cottage for a little over 9 years, and one of the things I used to find really difficult was how to engage him in learning at home. When it comes to special needs learning, there is no rule book for parents. Simple learning tasks became mountains to climb, and we as parents just want our children to learn so they can move forward towards a good life. Doesn't matter how, just learn. For us, this is where EfL has had and is still having a big impact. I remember when the school started using it about 4 years ago. I was super excited. Ever since Alex started at Swiss Cottage, I had been invited into the class to observe him doing various things, but I never really got to see him doing much because he was too excited about me being in the classroom. And usually he just came and sat on my lap. With the introduction of EfL, I got to be a fly on the wall. The teachers were able to capture video clips and pictures of Alex's learning and share them with me via the app. Seeing learning tasks being broken down into small chunks and how the staff engaged Alex really gave me the confidence to start doing the tasks with him at home.
What type of transport did Emma
Tea.
Yeah. But what letter do we need next?
Tea.
Yeah.
Tea.
Yeah.
The videos included anything relevant to his learning targets, and an added benefit were the school's tagging system, making it really easy for me as a parent to see which part of the curriculum the videos were evidencing. I want to highlight a different example of how we were able to use EfL during lockdown in the context of ensuring that Alex didn't miss out on his physiotherapy. Here we see one of his TAs showing exactly how the daily physiotherapy program was carried out in school. It was key to his engagement and highly motivating for him that a TA who knew him very well was doing the program. Initially, we watched it together. Later on, as he developed a routine in it, it was easier for me to incorporate the program into his day as we were able to move away from the video. The real difference that EfL has made for me in supporting Alex with his learning at home is seeing the videos. This has enabled me to replicate every detail of a task. Setting up a task and carrying it out in the same way as school has been really crucial for his engagement in doing some homework. Another benefit that EfL has brought with it is being able to watch the videos together with Alex at home. Before EfL was introduced, there wasn't a real chance to speak with him about what he was doing at school. But watching the videos together has given him a new voice and enabled us to talk in more detail about his school day. Here, he's able to show me an art session that he had at school, which he was really proud of. One thing is reading about his day in the communication book, but being able to watch this video back with him has given us a new and more engaging way of talking about what goes on at school, and it has really contributed to the development of his communication skills. The third and final benefit I'll talk about today is the ability for us to upload pictures and videos to share problems as well as achievements back with the school. This two-way of sharing has meant that we've spent less time formulating and defining learning needs as both parties are more tuned in. It has also meant that if I had a question about how to do something, I could easily send a video showing the problem, and together with the school we will be able to work out a solution much quicker. As an example, we had a problem with Alex's foot positioning on his pedals when he was riding his trike. He kept turning his heels inwards and hitting the frame of the trike every time his feet went round. it can be quite hard to explain the issues, and it was really, really helpful to be able to show the problem both to the class teacher and also to the OT, knowing that they both were on the same page with the problem, and by seeing it together they were able to work out a solution very, very fast. To round this off, I have chosen a last clip, which is an example of sharing an achievement from home. Alex has worked very hard on his keyboard skills, and he was so proud to be able to share back his newly acquired keyboard skills with his teachers and his classmates. Well, that's it for me. Thank you very much for having me today. It's been a real pleasure to talking to you all about the benefits of evidence for learning and how that has changed the way we learn at home.
Hi, my name is Sadia. I'm mother of a beautiful girl called Amaya. Amaya has Angelman syndrome and is nonverbal. Unfortunately, she recently fell and due to a seizure fractured her ankle. This resulted in her having to wear an air cast boot, which helped her walking, but unfortunately reduced her mobility. Obviously, it also meant that Amaya had to stay at home and miss out on going to school. As Amaya's ankle began to heal and her mobility became better, I started to upload videos onto EfL to capture her day-to-day progress. So, for example, I uploaded videos of Amaya navigating her way around the house wearing her support boot. I uploaded videos of Amaya standing in the kitchen with the help of her support boot enjoying cooking sessions. I was also able to showcase Amaya resting her broken foot on a stool as support while sitting at her desk to do her favorite activities such as painting and cutting and sticking. The videos that I was uploading allowed her school team direct observation and assessment of Amaya's mobility and her needs. EfL for me as a parent became a powerful tool to share videos and write detailed notes capturing Amaya's real-life situations to evidence, assess and track Amaya's mobility whilst in her support boot. I knew that the school team would be conducting a risk assessment for Amaya's return to school. However, the exciting part of using EfL to showcase Amaya's progress was that as a parent, I became part of the dynamic participatory risk assessment process. EfL empowered me to take charge of transferring videos on Amaya's real-life situation, which in turn enabled the school team to make the most appropriate and practical decisions for easing my daughter back to school. The EfL app enabled the school team and I to work together to develop a trusting working relationship to transition Amaya from being homebound with a fractured ankle to being back in her school environment that she loves so much. The fact that the school team were able to share with me the risk assessment and the structures that would be put in place for Amaya's return to school gave me confidence and reassurance that Amaya would be safe when returning back to school. The use of EfL in this situation really did showcase a best practice in enabling parent interaction in developing a risk assessment. For me, this proved to be a powerful example of how EfL can enable parent and school engagement in developing a risk assessment to transition pupils back to school. There's no doubt in my mind that the risk assessment sped up Amaya's return to school. Rather than becoming a tick box exercise, the risk assessment became a real-life interactive process. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here and for illustrating how the Evidence for Learning app has helped my daughter return to school.
Wow. Thanks very much to Maria and Sadia and to Vijita as well for introducing that with their slides. And also thanks to Dean for putting that together. I know Vijita Dean from Swiss has played a big role in putting that together. You very kindly, the three of you have put yourselves forward to answer any questions. I don't know if anybody's got any questions. Feel free to unmute if you want to put one. I had one question actually, which is kind of directed to the three of you. And I just wondered if, and I guess maybe the starting point for this is with Vijita, but I wondered if you found you've had to work on some of the terminology, language, and sometimes jargon that gets used. There's a language that as teachers, colleagues are using for formative assessment and internally, and then there's a language to engage and connect with the families, and then there's the families language. And I just wondered if that was something that you've had to consciously work at, or how that's been.
Such a good question. And actually, it's a big part of why we went with EfL as well. I think the special needs, disability sort of arena has a lot of jargon, a lot of professional language. Assessment does as well. And actually for our families, they really wanted something that was going to be able to give them a real sense of, where's my child at? Where can they be? What are the next steps around that? Because there's also so many professionals wrapped around our pupils as well. So part of going with EfL was also so that we could move away from this expert language and actually bring it to, what does the pupil do? What is this piece of video or image of working show us? The observations of the teachers are sitting at the heart of that, and then the observations from the family are wrapping around that as well. Internally as a school, there's been quite a process for us, which we'd share with colleagues, on being able to take small steps in order to move this forward. So it started with us considering how teachers wanted to lead it for a pathway and a group of classes, what they did with teaching assistants and support staff and practitioners to be able to support their confidence in how to take that step, put up a piece of evidence, and then have colleagues wrap around that to be able to do a reflective inquiry piece. And then really expecting a relationship and conversation piece on, now think about how you'll communicate that with the family, so that actually we're not holding all the information, it is getting released to the cloud so that families can interact with it. For us, that has also been a learning curve on how we do that with external therapists that are working on site, so that they don't feel there's any risk in this process. Actually, it's mutually beneficial if families are able to interact with that.
And I could just add to that.
Please, Sadia.
In the EfL for home, I upload the videos, but underneath there's a box to write, and therefore I'm able to sort of illustrate the video I'm putting up on Amaya during weekend or in lockdown, and what she's doing, and I'd be using basically Amaya's voice. I'm representing Amaya's voice, so I'd be using her vocabulary, even though she's non-verbal. I would be using the words she likes to say, or the people she likes to see, or doing the things that she likes to do, and input that into the box, so that I'd be transferring Amaya's vocab to the teachers, and then the teachers would absorb that and able to use that for her in the class.
Wow, that's a really good point. It leads me actually to the question I was going to ask, but Maria, did you want to add to that before I? No, that's fine. So my question was a bit of a selfish one, and it's directed squarely at Sadia and Maria. As parents, what would you like to be able to do through EfL? And I'll sort of start that with hopefully what I hope will be some positive news for everybody, because I think probably the single biggest thing that we've been asked for over the last 6 years is a parent app. We've been working on that for the last couple of years. We're hoping that shortly after May half term, we'll have the first version of the iOS Android parent app. And not only does it give you an app for a lot of what you're doing at the moment, I was explaining to Vijita, we're also putting into it the ability for you to share things like your assessment books on a read-only basis with families. So you'd be able to see the outcomes against, say, for example, PLGs, and then the evidence against those. So that's coming, and hopefully, I said that should, touch wood, although these things often are delayed, be sort of sometime in June, we'll have the first version of that out there. But I would like to ask Sadia and Maria, what would you like to see in the app? What would help you? And I guess more crucially, what would help Alex and Amaya as well?
I think for me, it would be I think I have two big wish things on my wish list, and I think one of them are definitely to allow for larger files to be uploaded from the parent point of view, because sometimes I feel that there is a cap on what I want to show, and it doesn't quite allow me to show what I want to show. So I just think to a bigger file size, and I think going forward, it would be really helpful to have a tool where you could almost like you could pull in some of the videos into a little one-page profile, so that when your child transitions into a new service, or you just need to give someone new who's working with your child a quick review of who are they, that would be really, really helpful. Because I think evidence for learning holds so many snapshots of what they can do, but how do you put it together to make it really meaningful in a fast and snappy way? I think those are my two big things at the moment.
That's great, thank you. Hopefully the app will enable us, that'll put us on a path where we might be able to upload bigger video files. So we'll look into that. That's something that comes up quite often. So thanks, Maria. Sadia.
I would like to really echo what Maria said. I would be really happy to see a sort of a place that we could upload not only bigger files, but also, as Maria said, perhaps I'm finding at the moment it's quite isolated. So I upload one photo or one video and write on that, but sometimes it's interrelated. A family event or something like that. So it'd be really nice, as Maria said, perhaps more of a sort of portfolio almost, where you could put in 2-3 videos and have perhaps 2-3 bubbles to write on. Rather than, I find it's all a bit isolated at the moment. So it's one picture or one video with one box of comments, and then I upload that, then I have to start another one, and yet the two are interrelated.
Yeah. No, that's, thank you. There's a feature that we're working on within EfL. I think I mentioned this to Vijit. I've certainly mentioned it to a couple of people who are on the call. It's the idea of the working title for it is a learning canvas. And the idea is, instead of having a piece of evidence be in the standard format where you have your 3 photos, your comments and your frameworks and everything else, what it gives you is a blank canvas. And then on that blank canvas, you can search for either videos or photos that you've already collected that exist in other pieces of evidence. And then on that, you can then write. So it's a bit like if you imagine making a PowerPoint slide, but where it would be inside the app, and you can pull in bits of evidence, photos and videos, and actually put in words as well. And so hopefully you can get something that is, like you say, is more dynamic over time. And we've started to map out some possible uses for that. You've come up with a couple of really good ideas today. So I'd really like to work with you on those as we get those close to being released. I'm hoping we'll have something like that in for the autumn term. Thank you both very much. Just, I guess, related to that a little bit, the other thing that we're hoping to have the first version out of shortly in the summer term, so second half of the summer term, and this is a kind of formal call for anybody that's interested in being part of the beta testing of this, is I've mentioned before, we've been working on a learner version of evidence for learning. So the idea with this is learners will actually be able to have their own version of the app. Obviously, they wouldn't be able to amend or edit any evidence that's been created by teachers, but it's somewhere where they have their own space, where they can, as has come up from our speakers today, their own voice, somewhere where they can express themselves. We see it as a long journey, because obviously many of our children and young people are, as you said, they're non-verbal. They may need to express themselves through some form of AAC or device or symbols. So we're genuinely sincere when we say we're really keen to work with any settings or stakeholders that would be really interested in helping us develop what that might look like. We'll certainly have the first version, hopefully, before the summer, and it'll be a work in progress. So if you're interested in that, please just drop me a line. There were a couple of questions. Vijita's answered it. Vijita was asked, how do you stop the over-uploading of evidence over lockdown? Do staff respond to every piece of evidence that parents upload? That's a really good question. So Vijita, if you don't mind, I might get you to just sort of verbally, I know you've answered it through the chat, but the chat, I don't know if it's going to be part of the recording of this, if you wouldn't mind, thanks.
We've moved to a point very quickly in the sort of first year where any evidence that came through was valuable. Anything that parents are sending, they're sending because there's something they want to share. It could be something that they think might be a piece of the puzzle for what we're considering short-term, medium-term, or long-term. And it's been fantastic to see teachers being able to use some of the uploads to allocate to specific members of their team. Could be teaching assistants, could be practitioners working with the timetable, so that they can reflect on that piece of evidence, bring back their observations and key points to the team. And we've found that a great way for being able to professionalize the role of support staff. They're incredible. They're facilitating small groups of learning. And actually, if we're able to support them to really be in that reflective inquiry process, they'll be linking it to the EHCP and those personal learning intentions. So they become not an extension of the teacher, but actual, facilitators of learning. And they feel such pride when they go through that process as well, because they've been able to bring those reflections to the table. Any piece of evidence at this stage for us is a great piece of evidence, because the families had ownership in wanting to share that. And again, that thing about that relationship, if it's a mutual relationship, and one where the family's voice is the one that's driving what we do, we want to make sure that if they've seen this as relevant to the curriculum, it's teaching us something that we might learn on what we want to include in that curriculum area.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a really interesting point. There's a few interesting points in there. Thank you. We'll move on to our next speakers. I just would like to share a couple of comments. There's been probably more comments than questions, Maria and Sadia. I think the feedback is unanimous. We're all extremely grateful for you, to you both, for taking the time to record those videos and share your experiences and hopes and aspirations. People have said thank you for sharing, what fantastic videos and evidence of Alex's learning. Again, a massive thanks for sharing Amaya's learning journey, inspiring. So thank you both very, very much, and extend our thanks to Alex and Amaya too. We're really grateful to have the input from your families. Thank you. I'll move now to Joe and Ashley from D-Banks, who are going to give us a fantastic presentation based around some work that Joe did just before COVID, which I remember her telling me about. And when she told me about it, I said, right, we need to share this with everybody. So it's taken us a year to do it. But over to you, Joe and Ashley.
Oh, thank you. Just to start off, just to echo what Alan's just said, and it's just fantastic to hear from two parents. It's just really inspirational to know the positive impact that can be brought about by a school that's very far down the line, working with families with through EfL, something that we're still working on, and we're starting to see the benefits of that. Alan's asked me to share the work that I did as part of my MPQH project. So those of you that have done any leadership training will know that you have to do a focused project in your own school. And I chose this for a number of reasons. It's a big part of our school improvement as well. Special schools, as we all know, do lots of work with families. As a general rule, I think we like to think that we're all very good at it. We communicate every day. We have homeschool diaries. We talk to parents regularly. We have lots of meetings. Pre-COVID, we would invite parents into school and families as often as possible. We're fortunate enough to have a full-time family support worker. We have siblings days. We were already doing lots of work, but I think the opportunity to use a system like EfL would bring another dimension to that. So for us as a school, this was our wish list really. So I just wanted to share this to put into context actually why I chose to do the project around family engagement. The first point really encompasses, the rest of what we were hoping for. Just that opportunity to share and celebrate together every child as a successful learner. And by doing that, building, frequent positive opportunities to work with families and get those very strong and trusting relationships. Often I felt, in my career as a teacher, in some situations you can have very regular contact with a family, but that's because there's an issue going on or there's a struggle going on with something. And, you know, I've always hoped that we could get to that level all the time in a positive way. So, you know, that was a real motivation. This has been mentioned as well before, just providing a window into the world of school. One of the parents has just said it, just being that fly on the wall. And I've always thought it would be lovely for our parents to have that. There's no other way we can give it to them other than filming their children when they're not there. And as that was highlighted as well, you know, children respond very differently when their parents are in school sometimes. So to provide that window into the world of school and the curriculum that we offer, what their child gets out of that curriculum, and building that understanding over time of what we do in school, how we approach things and how that helps their child. And likewise, you know, for us to get that from school, from home as well, to have that window into the world of home. Through that, we can hopefully promote engagement. So we've learned lots about some of our pupils that we didn't necessarily know before. We've learned that they like doing certain activities at home that they've never explored at school. We've learned different things that motivate them. And likewise, we've shared things we found in school with families at home, and that's been put to really good use and really supported them well. We use MAP in a lot of our classes, and there's obviously we're looking very closely at the generalisation of skills, which has really driven our curriculum and the way that we teach. You know, made us question what's the point in, you know, them being able to do this particular thing with a particular person in a particular place in school and not be able to do it anywhere else. So we've been having a lot of those conversations with our families, and the use of EfL really supports that. And that's what we were hoping we would, you know, we would get that very strong link with our teaching and assessment that way. We're hoping that we would be able to use it to model strategies and approaches and use of equipment and resources to support parents. You know, a lot of parents are interested to see, how do you do that? How do you do PECs at this stage? And we can actually, we were hoping, you know, we would be able to model things and share them. We were hoping that we might sometimes find that missing piece of the jigsaw puzzle. You know, sometimes children say words and we're not quite sure what they mean and where that's come from. And, you know, to be able to share that evidence with parents and then give us that missing piece of the puzzle is really valuable. It's, you know, great for providing evidence of achievements and progress. So supporting those discussions to actually determine what our next step should be and what is an appropriate level of challenge. And sometimes that does come into the wider team, people with different opinions and different ideas. And actually, when you've got that evidence that you can share very easily, makes that discussion a lot more focused and a lot more relevant to what the child can actually do and wants to do. And also importantly, I think, you know, we all work hard, and, you know, staff in school respond very well to encouragement. That's human nature, as do parents at home. And I think to have that mutual appreciation between home and school, of you're doing a great job, wow, it's great to see them doing this at home, wow, it's great to see them doing this at school, that just gives everybody encouragement and motivation to keep going and keep doing more, keep doing the next thing. This is just a couple of very quick examples of some of the evidence that we were starting to see. So this was, you know, before we'd actually done this very focused work around family engagement. I had planned from the very beginning to share evidence with parents as soon as possible. So I'd warned staff, as soon as children, you know, every child's got something on it, we're going to set it up with parents. And this sort of evidence from home started to come back. So evidence of, you know, this young man in a cafe trying to butter his toast, which is a huge achievement. Parents were really proud, and staff responded. Another very young child, first year of school, you know, reading a story using the pictures. Mum was really proud, shared that with us, wanted us to continue that, and it just started that dialogue and that back and forth about being a team really around the child in a way that we'd never had before. So for the purpose of my project, again, those of you who have done these sorts of projects will know that they have to be fairly specific. and they have to be linked right back to supporting teaching and learning. Obviously, as Barry's talked about, there are huge benefits that go beyond just our very focused planning in the classroom to working with families. But for the purpose of the project, I wanted to look at personalised teaching and learning. So how that increased involvement with families and parents in sharing and receiving progress information could have a positive impact on our personalised teaching and learning, our personalised element of the curriculum. So a very brief overview. The project ran for 2 terms, so I was fortunate enough that I knew what I wanted to do and I started it at the start of my course. You know, sadly, other people on the course, it got very disrupted by COVID, so I was fortunate that I managed to do 2 full terms, finishing just at the point where the first lockdown happened. And at that point, we had sent out letters in the summer term previously to encourage parents to set up an EfL account. We've told them all about what it was. Please agree to this, send back your details. And at that stage, we had about 42% of parents that had responded, so they were interested. And so that became sort of part of the baseline data. So we were trying to build it up from that point. So I monitored the number of parents who accessed their account, how many parents logged in and how frequently they did that. And then I looked at the number of gains within the map tool, which isn't ideal. I fully appreciate that map is not meant to be used for comparative reasons in this way, but it's the only assessment that we had for the purposes of the project. But it did throw up some interesting things. So these are the actions that I took in order to increase that interaction with parents through EfL. So we looked very closely at exactly which parents didn't have accounts, and we got in contact with those parents. That just looks like one line of text, but that in itself is an extremely big job. So I spent a lot of time talking to parents, showing parents things, and that got, you know, led out to a wider team of staff. I couldn't do that on my own. And when parents phone the school, they often speak to the office for sort of technical support with other, like we use Arbor, we have an app for that. And also our family support worker, who meets with all new starters as well. So she was very key in actually promoting it for all children that were new to the school at the start of the year. And, you know, she's helped me to monitor, you know, which parents would benefit from using it more. And she's in regular contact with those parents, and she uses her relationship as well to encourage that. So that's been really beneficial. We did build it into all teacher appraisals. So we're trying to embed it into practice, which goes back to what Vijita was saying, you know, what's our understanding and expectations of staff in terms of responding to parents and working with parents. So the appraisal was a really good opportunity for us to sit down with every teacher in the school, talk about their class, explain that, you know, there was an expectation to raise the amount of engagement. But obviously that means that we've got to have regular evidence uploaded, that the whole class team needs to be involved, and that the teachers have the very best knowledge of how to work with children in their class and their families, because they know them best. And it was really important to work with every teacher and pin down what they thought would be a good way of working with their particular families, which is why I've asked Ashley to join me and talk a little bit about her class in just a moment, because they're doing that work very directly in a way that I'm not. So that was really beneficial. We also have an assessment and accreditation coordinator who had a focus on this area and would look at, you know, classes evidence and talk to them about how much was being shared with parents and, you know, how to respond. And we did some focus work around that. We did arrange support sessions for staff that still were saying that they're not quite confident in using the system, a bit wary of it, and maybe the technical aspect, the staff that, you know, have been in school a long time and got used to paper-based systems, and also a bit anxious about responding to parents. So we've tried to support those staff as best we can. Obviously, I've had to monitor the parent login and their contributions at regular intervals to sort of assess how it's going. It's been a huge part of our reviewing and planning meetings with our internal formative assessments. We try to follow the MAP approach, very, very closely. And it's come into a lot of discussions there around generalisation and what next steps we need to do in terms of working with families to support that. We've tried to share the evidence with parents that maybe haven't logged on or don't log on as regularly, just to prompt them a little bit and invite them into seeing what's there, tempt them really to join in and collaborate with us. We've moved away from a big annual end of year report, and we're reporting termly against personalised plans to parents, and that's also another opportunity to say to them at those regular intervals, there's some great evidence of them doing this on EfL, please log on and have a look. We'd planned to run some face-to-face events, which unfortunately didn't happen because we planned to do those in the spring term. However, even though there was some work with parents that we didn't get to do, we did see a huge increase from all that work in the amount of engagement that we had through EfL. So this is just a summary of the project data. So we started off with 42% of parents that had responded, and that was after a couple of letters going out the summer term previously. And by the end of the spring term and into the summer term of last year, we had 95% of parents with accounts. That's gone up now. We're nearly at 100 now. So we've done a little bit better again this year, which is great. Out of the parents that are actually logging on and looking, we had around 30% that were logging on and looking. By the end of the spring term, that had gone up to 72%. So, the majority of parents that had actually made the step to set up an account were logging on and looking. Obviously, a smaller number that log on weekly or more, and a smaller number that actually upload evidence from home themselves. But that is obviously, gives us something to keep working on into the future. So it did show that we managed to improve the parental engagement over that time. I looked at our average increase in gains with the MAP. As I said, it's not ideal, and we were quite new to using MAP at this stage as well. So I think there were an awful lot of other factors coming into play. It wasn't just about parental engagement, as you will all realise, but I had to show with some data. As you can see, this analysis didn't really show that the parental engagement had any impact at all. So what I did was I did a further analysis, and I looked at parents that were highly engaged. So those parents, that were logging on weekly and were sharing evidence with us from home, compared with parents that weren't doing quite as much. And that did show a little nod in the right direction. So the pupils that had above average gains across all aspects of the MAP assessment in all their learning intentions, there was a little bit higher, as you can see, in the group where the parents were more engaged with what we were doing and more engaged with looking at the evidence and collaborating with us than with the parents that weren't. So I was very pleased at the end of it that it did show something, but obviously, that sort of data isn't everything to us. I think we feel very strongly as teachers that have experience of working closely with families, that those families that you do build that relationship with, and that you do get that interest both ways in what we can all do to help, and you become a team, that you feel those children are going to have the best chances of meeting their potential, and that will continue into the future. And it was great to do a project and have something that did reflect that a little bit. In terms of what we've done since, so that was last year, obviously at that point, we had the pandemic. For us, I think those families that were very, happy working with EfL and very secure, and we're using it regularly. That continued to be their primary form of contact with school, and it was a great thing, and it you know, it's made it even stronger and even better, and that back and forth between home and school has got even better, which was great. And for other families that have maybe we've just got them logging on, and you know, that we were just getting somewhere with it, and for some of those families it was quite difficult over lockdown, and you know, we ended up getting in touch with them other ways, and we went back to maybe phone calls and emails because it worked best for that family at that time, and we had to listen to what they wanted us to do. So once we'd come back to school in the autumn term, we have had a big focus again on it, and some teachers moved classes. So, you know, we asked everybody to just refresh, check in with their families, you know, talk about EfL again, you know, offer to reset passwords, write notes home, ring them up, have a chat about it, and just take that opportunity to sort of start again with it if we needed to. And again, that's taken up a lot of time, but it's been time that's been well worth it. We did have a document with staff, for staff, about the importance of gathering evidence, because I think that's been, you know, a discussion across school, having those expectations of all staff contributing to it, because it's not something that a teacher can do on their own. They can't gather all the evidence and have that ongoing relationship with parents all by themselves, and it, you know, it's great when all staff get involved with that. We're going to get much further with it, and so I think it's very important that all of our staff understand why it's important, and when it's working well, what the benefits of that are for school and for home. And we're just starting to see that now, I think, in, you know, where we've got sort of examples where it's working brilliantly, and we've had a really positive impact of parents that we're very engaged with that both ways, and staff can see the clear benefits of it. We've obviously had to work with new staff that haven't used EfL. That's an ongoing challenge for us, to get everybody using it consistently. And we've had some class teachers that have chosen to do some really focused work around it because they feel very strongly about forming better relationships with their parents and their families and working together as a team for the child. So I'm going to hand over to Ashley now, because it's great to hear from a class teacher, because she's doing this very directly. So here's Ashley.
So it would just give you an overview about my class. So at the moment, it's 7 children, which consists of 6 boys and 1 girl. And all of the children within the class have got autism spectrum condition and severe learning difficulties. And then from that, some children have ADHD, some exhibit challenging behaviours, some have processing difficulties, and the majority of them are non-verbal. And then when you look at their home lives, again, that greatly varies, because some of the children are only children and it's just them in their house, as opposed to some where they are actually one of 9. And then parent-wise, some of my parents' children only have 1 parent, and then due to modern family setups, some have got 4. At the start of me doing this work, 6 out of the 7 children had at least 1 parent who was registered with EfL. There was very much minimal engagement across all the parents throughout the class. Very few would log on, but no families would actually submit evidence of what the children were doing at home, whether it was fun activities or focused learning that the parents had tried to do. So the reason that I decided I felt it was important was because we were trying to get consistency with the children. So what we were asking the children to do at school didn't necessarily match up with what the parents were asking them to do, and the expectations that were being asked of them differed greatly from home to school. So for example, on a Monday morning, one of my children would turn up and would come straight into class and would stand and wait for you to take their coat off. By Friday, it was very much, they understood that we expected them to try and take the coat off and would help at certain parts when necessary. But obviously that wasn't the same at home, and through working with EfL, the parents have now seen that their child is able to do it and have been trying to do that work with them at home as well. So the expectations of what everyone around this child was asking suddenly became really consistent. One of the other reasons was because obviously a lot of our sorry, I was reading my own PowerPoint. So what we were saying to parents that they could actually do, some parents were saying that they hadn't seen it at home and that it was similar in other ways, that parents were saying things that they could do we couldn't see at home. So it was a great way for us to be able to see this consistency. And then that then links to the first point, that we were having the same expectations, because now we could see for ourselves that they could do it similarly to the way caregivers could see that they could do it in school. It then as well, it's been a great way for us to improve the confidence of the people who have been taking the time to do work with the children. And what we were hoping was that they would see that we haven't got this magic wand that we teach them how to do certain things in school, and that it's not things that they could do at home. So simple things like pouring a drink, of having a routine for that, and it's things that they can do for themselves at home. We also wanted to help parents understand that what they are doing for their children at home, every little thing that they did was helping with their child's learning and improving their skills. But overall, it was about creating a better quality of life, because some of our children were getting distressed at the thought that they were being asked to do something and having a demand put on them, and it wasn't matching up with what they were being asked to do in another setting. So from doing this project, we've now found that they're much happier to complete certain tasks, because there is this consistency across all of their settings, and everyone has the same expectation of what they're asking the child to do. So the way we have been doing the work with families to create engagement is that as a class, we inform the parents that evidence, whether it be related to their specific targets or their wow moments and their fun times in school, that it would go up routinely throughout the week, and that we would try to get certain numbers of evidence onto it. So whenever they check, there should always be something new on there. Obviously, with home lives and chaos of whatever could be going on, we then put prompts into our homeschool books to remind them that there is still evidence for learning working in the background, and that they can see what the child's been up to, or how they've been that day, or behaviours they've exhibited. And then what we also did was we found that whilst parents really enjoyed seeing the specifically focused target work of doing this routine and this routine, that it was also about seeing the moments where they were enjoying themselves and they were doing activities that they really enjoyed and wanted to be a part of, or working with peers that they would normally not want to work with, and just general parts of the day that parents miss out on. And then what, as a staff, we've done in our classes, we've monitored when parents have logged on, and we've tried to work out the certain days they'll log on, or if we write in our homeschool books to say they've done this fantastic thing, you really need to look at evidence for learning because it's really, really good, that they will log on. And the ones that didn't, we then would then put another reminder in, so the bits of evidence that were getting uploaded weren't getting overseen and moved further down the line, that they weren't able to see it, or it was days and days or weeks of them not being able to see it. And then what we do is, again, in the homeschool book, when it comes up to a holiday, we encourage them to upload all the things they've done, and then we add in all the tags and some comments for it, so that they can see that actually this activity that they've done with their child links to this area and this area and this area, and that they can see that this fun activity has had great impact on their child's learning. So from doing this, I found that a lot of parents can be unsure as to how they feel about putting things on. So for instance, it could well be that they think that what they're putting on isn't right, or that it could be judged by other professionals that are in school as not being quite the right way to do something. And the parents appreciate a balance between the bit where the child is having a lovely time and embracing activities, but also them being able to see that their child has made progress. So from when they started working at a target where it was very much adult-led, them trying to use whatever system they could to get the child to engage with it, to them being able to do it completely, utterly independently. So parents were worried about what other people may think about how they dealt with something or how they tried to teach something. And it's been great for them to be able to see that we haven't got a magic wand to be able to say, this is going to teach this child this, but this will do this. And it's helped our parents to gain so much more confidence in what they are providing for their child. Some parents have viewed the use of evidence for learning is only to share news, and as I said before, what we've done is we've added tags so that then that way they can see that these new news things that they've been putting on of going to the park, links to community areas, independence of walking, safety in the community, a vast number of things. But what they haven't realised is that all these things contribute, and that instead it was just them having a nice day out. So it was a great way for us to link in with the parents to say they've got all these things that they've done just from this our activity that you've done as a family. Parents are more likely to engage with the evidence when they feel that it's things that they know their child are going to enjoy. So a swimming day or a park day, or it might be a bikes day, and that's the day that they'll look on. So then we try to make sure that the evidence for a certain chunk of time has been put on before those days, because we know that they'll go on and look at those times, and then that's shown an increase of, oh well, I've noticed this went on 2 days before, so I'll have a look again the next week. And then we've also found that making sure that we comment to the parents as soon as possible, so that the parents are aware that it's not just being uploaded to this device and that's it, never to be seen by anyone, but actually we are looking and we're engaging the same way as we're asking them to engage. And then from that, we've now got 7 parents in the class, so all the parents have got an account, and from that, 5 parents log in on a regular basis of more than 2 to 3 times a week and actually upload evidence of home life. This has helped then to improve the independence of the children within my class, because there is this consistency of what we're asking them to do and what home life is asking them to do. This has then led to parents asking us more questions of, I've seen this symbol works for my child, so can I have some? Or what was that resource that you've used? Because they don't do that at home, but they did with this resource. And coincidentally, yesterday, one of my parents had written on Evidence for Learning that they'd actually bought one of the resources we use in class for a music session for their child's birthday, because the child had so much enjoyment from engaging with this activity that they just said we needed one at home. So it was great that they can see their child has these things that are readily available, but otherwise they might not have known were possible to have at home. And then, as I've previously said, it's about having this consistency throughout that's allowed all of the children to become happier and more settled within whatever they're being asked to do, because they know that it's consistent. So when they are presented with a new activity, it's very much, I know this is going to be asked of me, and I know this is going to be asked of me, and then this is going to be what happens. And from that, that's then helped with behaviours in our class, links with parents, how they are between going from school to home and vice versa. And generally it's had a very good impact upon our children in class.
Thank you, Ashley. So as you can probably glean, as a school, we're very excited about this. We're at the stage where, you know, we're sharing more, we're working more closely with families, and we're excited to discover all the benefits that it's starting to have. We're starting to reap the rewards of it at this stage, and it's really exciting for us. It's really exciting for me to listen to Ashley as a class teacher, and how she feels about her parents and how it's helped the children in her class. It's great, and that's what we wanted from the beginning. We didn't want teachers to put stuff on EfL and share it with parents because I said that's what you've got to do. We all need to believe in this as a school. We need to believe in why we're doing it and the benefits that it can bring for our wonderful pupils. So moving forward, we just need to continue with that. We need to continue to working with all staff about the importance of it, why we're doing it, and we need to keep it, trying to embed it as much as possible into our daily practice, as Ashley's just said, and it came up earlier. You know, what are the kind of expectations for staff? Do we have to reply to every comment? Do we have to do this? Yeah, we have to take every opportunity we can to work with families. We have to see it from their perspective and understand what's helping them, and do more of it, because what helps them helps their child, and that's what we're here for. For me, as somebody that's sort of, you know, leading EfL across the school, I think we've got to continue to work on achieving a balance between the quality of evidence. You know, we like, you know, all other schools, we use it to help our assessment and our planning, and it feeds directly into that. But when you start sharing it with parents, you've got an interesting sort of discussion there around, you know, well, this comment could better reflect such and such and such and such a level. But actually, that's not the only reason we're using EfL. We're using EfL to work with families and share with families and give them that insight into school. And, you know, what do the families value? So let's not get too hung up on every piece of evidence being of a certain quality with the comments. If it's a lovely video or a lovely photograph and you think the parents would like to see it, share it, get it out there and share it. You know, lots of our parents love things around communication, seeing their child be an effective communicator with different adults. They love evidence of swimming, they love seeing their child being able to feed themselves, trying new foods, because that's often a really big thing that's tricky for parents at home. They love seeing them having those off-site experiences, and we do lots of that work. So sometimes what we can be very focused on isn't always what the parents are focused on, and you know, we need to find that middle ground and work together. So it has also highlighted some of our concerns about some of our families and made us think very carefully about the barriers that they face in supporting their child, and made us think very carefully about what we need to do as a school to help those families. And it's just added a whole other dimension to our relationships with families and parents. It's provided an absolutely invaluable insight into life at school and life at home. We absolutely must use that to drive our curriculum, to make it more personalised, to really tailor it to the needs of every learner. And in doing, you know, if we have to tailor it to families to do that, then that's what we need to do. So we are very excited about it still, lots more work to do, and we hope it's been useful to share our journey so far, and that's just a lovely quote, I think, that just sums up you know, what we're trying to do. We're trying to have that success by actually being a team and working together. That's everything. I will stop sharing my screen if I can.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jo, and thanks, Ashley. Especially thanks to Ashley for your presence of mind and cool, calm, collected approach when
sorry, we had a visitor.
No, that was fabulous. No, that's what I love about this. It's so authentic. It's kind of welcome to our world. Thank you both so much. I think as Kim from Samuel Pepys said, it's really good just to hear how positive that engagement and sort of transference of skills and working with the children has worked between home, and it's obviously great that you've been able to pick that up as well through your assessment. So thank you both again. So what we're going to do, I'm very mindful of the time, and we've kind of let this thing evolve, and I'm so excited that we had Sadia and Maria obviously it's not every day you get parents come and join you like this. So what we're going to do, because of the timing, we're going to scrap the breakout rooms. I hope you don't mind. We're going to go to our last speaker, Leanne, who this is definitely worth waiting for, because this is really going to show you practical small steps that you can take. For those, I know there's a lot of people on the call who are just getting started on their EfL journey, and others who have been using it a while but haven't made those first steps into working with the parents. And I'm really aware of some of the concerns and uncertainties you might have around that. And Leanne did a presentation similar to this back in February of last year, and it was absolutely fabulous. She's also very kindly put together a top tips list, which she's offered to share with everybody. So that's going to be part of the bundle. But I'll hand over to Leanne now, who can share her screen. And then after this, what we'll do, if anybody has any questions and wants to stick around, we'll happily take Q&A. Blake and I will stick around. But I'm mindful that minibuses will start arriving and it's Friday. So we'll do a quick wrap up at the end. But over to you, Leanne. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Just checking everyone can hear me. Can anyone give me a thumbs up there?
Yep, can hear you fine at this end.
Brilliant.
And see your presentation.
Oh, super, it's working then. Hi everyone, so I'm Leanne Buchanan and I'm the Deputy Head Teacher at Foxwood Special School, which is over in Warrington, for anyone who knows the area. Our strapline is Together We Shine, and a lot of the work that we do is multidisciplinary. So Evidence for Learning was sort of our vehicle, if you like, to move towards getting everything in one place. So just as a brief history, we introduced Evidence for Learning 4 years ago, mainly as a replacement really for our work files, as a lot of schools will have done. So we went with robust monitoring procedures just to ensure that the evidence was really high quality and focusing on the learning that was taking place. That was sort of our first step, if you like. And after our first trials, we decided it was working really well, but we were still using quite a lot of different systems. So we decided we would merge all of our processes into EfL. And so we built personalised frameworks for every child. So our frameworks are based on the wider EHCP outcomes, which I'm sure colleagues in other areas of the country will realise some are great and some are not so great if they're the same as ours. So we break them down into individual education plan targets every half term. So it just meant we could populate and collect evidence against those wider outcomes that we could then use as part of the annual review. So after a term of populating Evidence for Learning and really, really closely monitoring it by our senior staff, we introduced Evidence for Learning to our parents and carers. And my presentation is really for people who are just starting out on that journey, and hopefully there'll be some top tips that you can take away. So introducing Evidence for Learning, we started off with an initial letter, and I thought to myself, what would I want if I was back at this stage again? And I would want a starting point. So my next slide is a screenshot of the letter I sent out. Obviously it was 4 years ago, but if you want to hover your fingers over the control and print screen, or you want to check the slides later on, please do, just to have it as a starting point, and then you can write your own from that. We did a newsletter, and we have very active social media pages, fantastic Foxwood on both Facebook and Twitter. So we did lots of updates about the exciting times coming with Evidence for Learning as a window to the school, as some other colleagues have mentioned, encouraging parents to add their own comments and their own photographs, just so we could build a bit of momentum around introducing Evidence for Learning to the parents. We then sent out a second letter, which included more detailed instructions for how parents could add it to the home screens on their phones or their tablets. And for parents without smartphones, obviously during lockdown, we've been able to access the DFE tablets, which was really great. But before then, we were able to loan out some devices for school. We were quite lucky in that respect, but we did have very few parents, who didn't have smartphones already. We also use the parent log section of the Evidence for Learning console to monitor that parental engagement. You can export the log into Excel and then sort it in different ways. So we could check who was logging in, how long for, what they were doing on there, if anyone was having any difficulties. And approximately we got about 70% of parents signed up and accessing EfL by that point in time. So this is the letter that we sent out. As you can see, it's quite meaty, but we wanted to introduce Evidence for Learning, what it was, why we were using it. And we also wanted to make sure that parents knew that we had an expectation that they wouldn't share the images taken from Evidence for Learning on social media, as we couldn't always rely on there not being other pupils in the photograph, particularly if it was a group activity. So we just felt that was important to make sure that parents had signed to say that they wouldn't do that. And we do have regular reminders of that in our safeguarding updates as well, for both parents and staff. We do try and make sure that children are on their own in photographs if it's something where they can be on their own. But as you'll all know, it's often group activities. We also downloaded the guide for parents and carers, which is available on the Evidence for Learning website. And that's quite a chunky guide, but parents who are quite tech savvy and want to do more with Evidence for Learning were asking, how can I upload? What shall I do next? So we sent out this guide. So that's available on the website. So we thought that this would be quite an easy sell, but some parents and carers didn't respond to any communications. They didn't sign the sheet. So we devised a bit of a plan of action to engage the rest of the parents. So if parents and carers are on pick up and drop offs, we spoke to them, and our office staff are amazing. They're like the friendliest ladies in the world. So we got them to talk to parents about Evidence for Learning, to encourage them. Oh, have you seen that video of such and such an Evidence for Learning? It's amazing. Have a look when you get home. Oh, you haven't got a login. Let me give you a form. So that worked out quite well. We wrote to parents and carers in the homeschool diaries. I used to reset passwords and send access instructions once a week to parents who hadn't logged in, just to remind them that I was still going to do it. And I think quite often they appeased me by clicking on the link. We targeted individual parents who hadn't accessed EfL at Parents' Evening. Pre-COVID, we could walk around with an iPad and say, oh, look what you're missing out on. Look at this video of such and such doing this wonderful thing. You know, you could upload a video and show us how they do that at home. We also have very close relationships with our social workers. So we sent instructions to them so that they were able to support parents when they were in the home environment to get on. We also have a strong nursing team as well. So a lot of our pupils have high medical needs. So the nursing team would actually learn how to use Evidence for Learning at school and then go out and support parents too. We also targeted our early years teacher, making sure that she got everyone onto Evidence for Learning straight off, so then we didn't have problems further up the school. We also set home learning activities. We don't call it homework, we call it home learning, but we shared that in the newsletter that was where the homework were going to be. We asked parents to add photos for a news time, for episodic referencing really, with our pupils when they arrive on a Monday morning. That worked quite well because parents were quite keen to show us what they've been doing at the weekend. And we also added how-to videos uploaded on the school social media pages. So I just filmed my iPad and talked parents through, set myself up as a test pupil and went on as parent view to show them what it looked like and where they could change the password, and they were quite well received by parents as well. But our most successful strategy was personalised letters. So I have a fantastic pastoral support officer. She took this on as her role. So she would log into the console and work out which parents hadn't accessed. And then she would create these letters with a screenshot of the pupil. So we notice you haven't logged on this half term. Please take this opportunity to look at this marvellous work. Oh, there's this fantastic video. Click on Evidence for Learning. If you need a password reset, just let me know. And I taught the pastoral support officer also how to reset passwords so that I didn't have to do that all the time. So they could ring her up and she could do a password reset with them and talk them through how to get on. So that was our most successful strategy. We do use this as well if logins reduce. We also have a governor who's a local businessman, and I did an MPQH project around using Evidence for Learning to show progress against the wider EHCP outcomes. And as part of that, he offered to sponsor the school, £10 for every parent we could get to log in who hadn't logged in before. So we managed to get 20 new parents logging in by sending out screenshots and letters and social media updates. Please, we're going to earn sponsorship for this. If you can just log in, see your child's work. And once we got the parents to actually log in, a lot of them realised what they were missing out on. They would often ring school and say, oh, I wish I'd known about this sooner. It's really great. So it's just that initial engagement. If you can get them to look in, then you've got them hooked then. Lockdown obviously gave us a really unique opportunity. It helped us to get all of the parents to log in, as we chose to use Evidence for Learning for our home learning delivery. So we used the activity channel and put up pre-recorded videos of lessons and also lesson resources. And parents were then encouraged during weekly welfare calls to be logging into Evidence for Learning, completing the activities that were set, and then uploading their own photos, videos and comments back to the journal so that we could capture that part of the learning journey from home. Anyone who was still in school, we continued to use the journal. We used something called a Phoenix curriculum just to re-engage the pupils back into school life. It was very focused on well-being. So parents were wanting to log into Evidence for Learning because it was perhaps key worker children, and the key workers were back at work and they were very anxious about their child. And it just meant they could log in and see that all was well at school. They were in the bubble, they were with the usual staff and the usual other pupils in the class. So parents and carers are very much more aware now of Evidence for Learning and how to use it. And the vast majority are now accessing Evidence for Learning regularly and uploading photographs and comments. It does dip here and there, and we use those strategies. That personalised letter works really well for the handful of parents who aren't accessing regularly. We continue to try and engage those last couple who we just can't quite get to engage yet by sending out those password resets, reminders if they do come to school for any reason, or we do phone them. We do remind them as often as we can. And as I mentioned earlier, we also use Evidence for Learning within our annual reviews. So showing the pupils are making progress, whether they've achieved those wider EHCP targets is quite powerful. We also use the Evidence for Learning at Meet the Team, Stay and Plays, coffee mornings, parent workshops. Obviously, we do a lot of that virtually now post-COVID, but we do hope to be able to do some of that face-to-face, hopefully next academic year, all being well. And we continue to use Evidence for Learning for home learning as and when needed. We have some pupils still on shielding letters who've got severe medical conditions, so we still use Evidence for Learning for that home learning element of our offer at the moment. And also if anyone has to self-isolate for any reason, we still use Evidence for Learning there. And that's it from me. I'm hoping that's just given a few practical tips really of how we went about it for the people who are at the earliest stages of the journey. As Alan mentioned, I have done a bit of a top tips list that will be shared with all of you as well in case it's useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Leanne. That was really useful. I've got no doubt that people will be downloading your top tip list, both the ones that came today and everyone else that will be accessing the group. So thanks very much. So look, that's 3:10. Let's bring the formal proceedings to a wrap. I'd like to thank all of our speakers, the co-hosts for today. Thanks to Barry, to Vijita, to Maria, Sadia, Joe, Ashley and Leanne. Thank you all very, very much for putting the time into getting your presentations together and the videos, but also for just sharing something of your experiences and how you've approached things. What we were going to talk about, can everybody see my PowerPoint slide?
Yeah, we're back on your PowerPoint.
Thank you, Blake. So these were the questions that we were going to put into the breakout rooms, and I wonder whether we'll circulate these. We came up with these as a team in preparing for today's session. So I wonder whether these might be useful questions for you to take back to some of your schools and perhaps share with colleagues as part of your reflection and discussion. I've learned loads just from listening to our speakers today. We'll share these questions in case they're useful going forward. I'd urge you, as I said, to look at the Padlet. That's going to be up there. So if you wanted to get in touch with any schools that you feel would be a good match for you, then just feel free to reach out to people directly through that. I think the final comment is to really thank all of you for being with us this afternoon. And it's really good to be able to get people together. I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to do the breakout rooms, but hopefully you'd agree. We had tons of food for thought. So I wish you all a fabulous weekend. Hopefully it's a safe and restful weekend filled with lots of sun. And we'll speak with you all again soon. Thanks very much, everybody.
Thank you.